Hi, welcome back to Burning River Bushcraft. I've got bad weather again outside, so today I'm going to take an opportunity to transform a Old Hickory boning knife that I got at a flea market for $1 into a knife more suitable for bushcraft. Okay, so here's what we're dealing with. This is the 6-inch boning knife. Again, this was 25 cents at a garage sale. Now on this particular knife, I do not see Old Hickory on the blade. I have one 100% identical to this. You put them side by side, other than this one's a little dirtier, can't tell them apart. So it's safe to assume that underneath all this grunge, this is an Old Hickory boning knife. As it sits right now, this knife would serve you just fine for outdoor use. You know, it's carbon steel, got a full tang, goes all the way through the handle. You know, this is a full size handle, 6-inch blade. You know, if I was to sharpen it up and make a sheath for it, I'd be happy with it. However, I'm a little pickier than that. If I was to carry a full size, you know, kitchen style knife, I am kind of partial to the older butcher knives, so I would probably go with something like this. For a smaller knife, I would prefer something, I'm going to call this like a Mora basically. I'm going to take a Mora in concept and kind of trace it out on the blade and make a full tang, American made carbon steel Mora. I guess we could call this a Mora Hickory or an old Mora. I'm not exactly sure. So because I'm starting with a 6-inch blade, I've got a lot of options to my length. You know, I'm not dictated to how long the thing's going to be right from the get-go. The issue I'm having is the width of the blade. So this is going to be a fairly slender, skinny knife just because that's what I'm starting with. Now, I'm a fan of Morris Kahansky's when it comes to knife choices, and he has always said, you know, a knife with the handle slightly longer in your palm and the blade slightly longer in your other palm. And if you look at my Skookum, you know, that's about where it is. I've got a little bit of handle sticking out, and I am just about as wide as my palm. And you know, most knives that I choose seem to end up being that way. And if you look at the handle on this knife, the handle's good to go. So I'm going to probably, you know, maybe go just a fuzz longer than my palm. So somewhere around here is going to be my cut length. So if I was to try to make this a Skookum copy, the handles are about the right length. I would have no problem cutting the blade the proper length, but the width is going to be an issue. I'm not going to be able to keep that continual curve. This is definitely going to be a straighter knife. But if I look at a Mora number 1 will lay right into that. So these are going to be about the same width. So again, going back to my original plan, you know, I really do like using a Mora, either a number 1, number 2. However, you know, this is not a full tang. It's never failed me. I've never had an issue with it, but this is going to be better. This is going to be a full tang. It's going to be a more durable knife. So you can kind of see where I'm headed with this. The grip's a little small on this knife, and the Old Hickory is going to take care of that. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to transcribe the blade profile and the blade length onto this old Hickory knife. Again, this is custom, and if you don't have any of these knives to you know, to measure off of, just take a guess at it. You know, if you've got a favorite knife, model it after that. If you wish your favorite knife was a 1/2 inch shorter or a 1/2 inch longer, try it like this. You know, that's the advantage to making your own gear and to working with you know, inexpensive things like, you know, yard sale Old Hickory knives. So I'm going to take some blue painter's tape and tape up the blade, and then we'll just kind of scribe around the Mora onto the Old Hickory. Okay, if this knife was sharp, I would be concerned with the edge, but this couldn't possibly be duller. So I've got this taped down, you know, no bubbles to it. And now I'm just going to match up the blades and trace out the Mora. So my next step is to take this outside, and basically I'm going to cut the outline out. Now you can use anything you've got. You could use a hacksaw, you could use a sander, you could use a grinder. I'm going to use a 4.5-inch angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. Now the thing to remember with this is a finished knife right now, so this is fully tempered. If you get this knife too hot, you're going to lose the temper on it, and then this knife's destroyed until it can be re-tempered. So as you make your cuts, continually dip this in water. Don't ever let it get too hot where you can't comfortably touch it with your bare hands. So I've got the knife all clamped into place here, and I'm going to be using an angle grinder for this. I primarily am just going to work on the tip. The blade's going to get slightly shortened to get that Mora blade shape that I'm after, but I'll be able to do that on a stone, so I'm just doing the heavy work here. And again, if this feels hot at all, you know, I'm going to quench it with water. So that was a cutting wheel, you know, and I got my initial shape. Now I'm just going to touch it up a little bit with a grinding wheel and then give me a flat 90-degree spine. You know, this is not rocket science. This is just basic metal work. The only thing you got to pay attention to is your heat. You cannot overheat the blade or you lose the temper. So after I used the cutoff wheel on the angle grinder to cut my rough shape, I switched over to the grind wheel and gave myself a 90-degree spine, and then brought the steel a lot closer to my Sharpie lines on the tape. So I got the shape I was after with the grind wheel primarily. Now I was looking at it and I had a slight hump right here where this transition piece comes down. This wasn't a very smooth edge. You know, instead of going at that with my hand stones, I decided to flip the grinder upside down and use it like a bench grinder. Figure I'd try it, a couple light passes, and it turned out great. I didn't have the camera on, and literally like in a minute I put a rough grind on the knife itself. So I probably should have showed that, but it worked out way better than I thought it would have. Now this is a very coarse edge right now, but this is a serviceable knife as it sits right now. So this is just a piece of a cedar here that I was whittling on, and right now you know, this thing will make a feather stick. You know, that's just a couple minutes. A couple minutes of time on a grinder, and it's already feathering up real nice. So I can work wood with it right now, but definitely not a finished product. So I gave the knife a good 90-degree spine. That's rule number one, is don't catch your table on fire in the basement. But I think that's throwing pretty good sparks. Now, let me get an edge here. Okay, let's try to fuzz some fat wood. So I've got a pretty aggressive stone here. This is a double-sided stone. No idea what the grit is. This is something I usually don't use on knives. I use this on like a real dull axe if I get it. This is not a water stone, but I am keeping it wet. Starting on the coarse side, I've got a slightly less coarse side on the other side, and then I'm going to hit it with the water stones. So I didn't spend a lot of time on it with the heavy stones, but I got what I needed to. I got a nice burr, and I was riding it back and forth. I've switched over now. This is an 800 grit water stone. So this is fairly coarse as far as water stones go. You just got to keep it wet and let the stone do the work. So that's a completely serviceable edge. You know, this knife will do anything I ask of it now as far as a woodcraft or a bushcraft knife. You know, I've got a long, comfortable handle. The blade turned out just about right. But to be honest, this knife would have done, you know, everything that I'm doing if I would have just sharpened it. It was a 6-inch long Old Hickory boning knife. You know, I just kind of made a Mora-ish contour to the front of it. Turn this thing into a full tang carbon steel Old Hickamora, and I'm pretty happy with the results. I'm going to go ahead and strop it. That's going to finish the edge off, and it shaved hair before. When I'm done with the strop, it's just going to pop hair off my arm. That's a sharp knife right now. And shaving sharp. So as far as the handle on this, I've had change of heart. Originally, I was going to try to contour this, maybe give it a Coke bottle shape. I kind of like it is. This is definitely a primitive style knife anyway. I mean, no sense trying to make it something it isn't. I'm definitely going to clean it up. Maybe clean the patina up on the blade a little bit, sand the handle, and see what it looks like. I might possibly do a cord wrap, but I think I'm going to clean it up. We'll see how it looks, and then you know, I'll use it in the kitchen, see how I like it, and then we'll end up making a sheath for this thing. But for now, the contour of the handle is going to stay the same. I'm just going to sand this up, and we'll see how it looks after that. Alright, so I'm going to hit this with the sander. You can see it's got paint and old kitchen funk and Lord only knows what else on this thing. So to see what I'm dealing with, you know, I'm going to give it a real light hit with a sander, get down to grain again on the wood. I'm not trying to change the contour of this at all. So we'll see what's under here. So here's how the handle turned out. You know, no need to stain this at all. This has got a nice look to it. I kind of like the steel better when it was darker, but like I said, I'd rather have an honest patina that I did. I'm going to just go ahead and hit this with maybe an SOS pad or something. That's usually how I treat my carbon steel knives. And clean it up, call it good. So again, a quarter. We turned a Old Hickory boning knife, you know, kind of followed the contour of a Mora number 1. If you look at the blades, they're nearly identical. The handles are significantly bigger, which that fits my hand a little bit better, so I'm happy about that. You know, we've got full tang on the Old Hickamora, solid wood slabs on this. So this is definitely worth doing. You know, keep your eyes open for vintage carbon steel kitchen knives. You know, even if you don't need another bushcraft knife, you know, this is handy to have in a kitchen. This looks an awful lot like a paring knife if you weren't a woods kind of guy, but to me this looks like a woodcraft knife. Besides the fact that you gained an additional knife for a quarter, you know, it gives you practice on sharpening from an extremely dull knife up to a razor sharp knife. And I would rather learn how to sharpen the knife on something cheap like this in case you screw up. You know, you can always you know, spend another quarter and find another donor knife. But for now, this is kitchen bound. Before I take this into the woods, I'm going to see how I like it, see how I like the grip. I might do like a jute twine wrap on this. I might round it, but I really doubt that. But if it works out okay in the kitchen, I'm probably going to make a knife sheath for this, and then we'll get it in the woods. This has been Jamie Boggs with Burning River Bushcraft. See you next time.